Fullmetal Alchemist is finally joining us in Union Arena. So whether you're a new player who's looking to join the game with this IP, or you're an experienced player who's maybe getting ready to go to Gen Con next week for the regional where this set is legal, in today's video we're going to go over 6 different deck lists to get you started with so you can dive into Union Arena and know this series inside and out. So with that out of the way, let's dive in. Now, up front, we got to acknowledge that we finally got searchers, and not just for one key deck, but honestly, all 3 of them. And while I won't spend too much time going into it right now, I did cover previously, like, what makes up a tier 1 or 1.5 style of deck. And spoiler, consistency is a big part of that when it's attached to a low energy unit. And again, as I mentioned, we got 1 for each color, which is absolutely great to see for those who are maybe getting into this series now, but also really want to stress is that it does feel like this is more of the year 2 evolution of Union Arena, as I keep mentioning, because we're also getting other ways of maybe either fixing the mulligan issue or having 2 energy costed cards that can cost for 0 if you have nothing else in your field. They really are trying to make up for the more consistency and not have so many feels bad style of games with it, because we've all been there where we just get a early 0 or 1 drop and then we don't curve out to anything else, and our opponent's seeing all the raids or the sites they need, and that's just no fun, right? So while not every deck is always going to have access to these because they might want to play a little bit differently, like the Roy Mustang deck that we're going to also talk about today, it is really nice to see, and I strongly feel that Bandai should do this going forward, at least 1 searcher per color, keeping in mind that each color is going to have 2 very different decks, because it can just at least give players a 1 consistent option each of those colors to gravitate towards. But with that out of the way, let's actually now really get into the list themselves. Now, of course, if you are picking up the starter decks, we are going to have the brothers together, but of course we are going to talk about Edward and Al, key stars, right? We got to talk about them first. And also just for me personally, and this might just be, I think yellow always gets kind of a rough go of it. Like we finally saw Esper Sisters get a little bit love in their play style and like being a good yellow deck, but yellow traditionally has kind of felt a little bad in Union Arena for a variety of reasons. But I think the most important thing to acknowledge up front is, 1, we got the Searcher, which I had just mentioned, but then also the other Ed Raid. It allows you to search the top 6 cards, which is going to further increase the consistency. So for those that are wanting to know more about this deck and its style, of course, I'll give a very quick overview for each one of these decks as well. If you just want to copy the list, fast forward, what have you. But for Edward, it's all about, shocker, bringing Al back and getting extra value off of it. Now, the one thing that we do have to acknowledge here is that a lot of the value or the ability to bring back very specifically the 4 energy Al is going to require you to see Gateway of Truth as a site. So generally, it's not always that we want to play like 4 of these, just because sites can clog up your energy line. It can be a little awkward because you can't promote them if you really need a blocker. So we are only playing 3 here. Also keeping in mind that, again, the raid unit can search it for us, but you really don't get the big value or, the big engine going until you find those pieces. What I really do like about this list, though, for both sides of it, is the 4 energy starter Ed gets the ability to choose if you want to have impact or not, where the other main set Ed has the ability to bring back Al and get the additional effects. And again, because you're able to bring him back for the effect, it becomes a very quick 4K attacker to get the damage in with. So this is a little bit more of a combo heavy deck, and I wanted to add the 3 energy Al here just as a shout out because it does help you draw some cards. So there are actually a number of ways to get extra draw consistency in yellow, which is very welcomed, right? You do have the ability to go through like the Gateway of Truth again if you really want to as well, but between the raid Ed that has the ability to search for some extra cards, as well as playing the other Al from your trash in case you got there early or you had to discard or what have you, right? There's more ways to get units back. So I really like this as an option of just having them play very well together from a flavor standpoint, but also just being a more aggressive yellow style of deck that once this engine gets online and gets going, you really do have a lot of power at your hands to chain these pieces together. Now, there are a few other cards you could splash in here. A lot of people I know might go for a more hybrid approach because Gateway of Truth is a double energy. You could go into a Ed and Greed package as well and having multiple of the raids combo that way with going little bit higher in your energy. But again, for the sake of this video, I really kind of wanted to highlight the key themes or what the decks are doing as just a way to get into the series. Again, all these videos I do of this style are meant to be more intro friendly, just help people getting into the game itself. So that is the overview of the Ed and L deck. So again, if you want to be able to play cards out of your graveyard and see Ed and L attack and take the battlefield together, swinging for 4K and then closing it out with the starter deck Ed for the 4K impact when you don't need the searcher anymore, then this is definitely a deck to go to. Now, Greed, with that other high energy deck I mentioned, this one does play very similar to just the go tall style or go high energy that we often see with green decks, but Greed here does have the ability now to, if you're going up into its higher cost, and when he's sidelined, you get to play another 4K for free. So it's a way to help get that consistent body without having to pay the action points and just being more aggressive with it. Now, the one thing I will also, again, call out for this yellow list is that we got another searcher or another way to get actually a triple energy provider. So this does help us curve out into that more 7 costed energy for the Lanfan if we really want to go to the very top end. But generally speaking, you're happy to sit around the 5 and 6 range. But having those raids just sit there and give you the extra energy in the back is very nice. And then, of course, with the color trigger, we do care about our energy totals as well. So this deck is going to be a little bit slower. It's going to require a little bit more of a build-up. This also tracks to the, well, I guess in this case, Zing Tribal, but there's always a tribal deck in these sets that care about how many copies of this tag do you have on your field that you care about. And spoiler, a purple deck is also going to care about very specific traits. But for this one, it is just about finding ways to survive until you get to the late game and then playing some of those very powerful top end cards. So giving up a couple points of, life early to hopefully stabilize. Now, the important thing to note here is that with Greed's ability, it does have kind of the baked in removal, and it does go up to 5K, which is the other important part for blocking, right? Oftentimes we see decks that really live in the 4,000 to 4,500 range when it comes to attacking. So Greed does give you that 1K BP boost that you really need to make it a great defensive unit. And then again, when it's sidelined, you do have the ability to get the other 4K out. So you're not losing tempo. You're not having to force another card on your turn where you can instead use it for like an AP draw, which is really nice. So it just keeps giving you the pressure where your opponent might have had a well-timed special to remove your blocker in that regard. So definitely a deck that if you like the more late game strategies with a little bit different, and again, the yellow color trigger just being an MVP as always for being able to lock down an opponent's card can be really strong. And then lastly, just have to give a shout out here too from a flexibility standpoint is that I actually really do like Lanfan from this deck list because it is a early provider that we can play. Sometimes just a 2 energy 3K is more than fine. If you have to be defensive, maybe your opponent pushed up a bunch of 2Ks, that's totally fine. And it actually increases in power as the game goes on. So at all stages of the game, not only can this be either an energy builder that you're then pushing to the front line to attack with, or just late game, if you want to play the extra action point, she can just go under what your opponent has set up for a wall because late game, as you might know, is generally all 4K bodies to the front as your opponent's trying to push past your Greed because it's a 5K blocker. Lanfan can come down out of nowhere, and if they have a wall built up, right, go, okay, here's some extra damage, find a way to deal with it, sorry, right? So that's something to keep in mind as well. Getting those surprise attacks and going under your opponent can be very important as well. Again, we do need to find the 7 energy, so we have to rely on Mei and getting the Xiao Mei to tutor it up and make sure we're finding all those pieces. But again, another deck that it's very nice to see that we have consistency pieces baked in, which can help you achieve that higher status of, well, both being in a higher tier list overall, as you're going to see towards the end, but just being a solid deck from a consistency package and getting to do what you want to do. Now, y'all know I love Roy Mustang, and I promise this is not blue slander because you know me, I love Nanami. I love pretty much every blue deck in Union Arena. I don't like this one though. Look, okay, so it's super cool. Roy Mustang himself has an ability where you just get to pitch cards and send something to the removal area instead of the trash or sideline so it doesn't get that effect, right? So it's really cool that Roy Mustang just incinerates them. They're gone. They don't get the effect, right? Cool, great, flavorful, love it. I don't like not having cards in hand, right? So Roy's whole thing, and Riza is really great at supporting it, but this is a more super low to the ground, aggressive deck. Vomit your hand and just pray and start swinging, right? Riza allows you to neg their board, as well as the other Roy, which allows you to combo and remove their BPs, which means you're just constantly attacking, trying to get chip damage in. And we do have a couple cards that allows us to, well, draw another card as we're attacking, so we always have more options on our own turn. However, that can feel really bad when you're trying to string certain things together and making sure that you're finding the right either special into a final or something of that nature. But keep in mind that you are actually getting to draw a couple extra cards as units are attacking. So there's a way to refill it that way. And there's also technically an event card that you could run that is probably correct in this list, but I don't think that is a more beginner-friendly version of the list. Again, I like to do all 3s and 4s for the sake of it, but you probably run a 2 of the event card just to help smooth out some of these issues, because again, you are going to find yourself in positions with this deck, especially if they remove your raid right when you get it, that you go, oh crap, I need a combo piece, again, either Reza or another Roy to shrink their board so you can threaten a point of damage, or you're just going AP draw and praying, but if you draw too many cards, then that's going to work against what your deck wants to be doing unless you very specifically hit the raid Roy. Now, again, you likely are going to, all things considered. You can just pitch it your hand to his effect to make it, well, work out. But it does, give me a little bit of stress and anxiety on the inside when I have to see these very perfect hands, as it were, to make sure we're getting the most value out of staying low to the ground and being aggressive. Again, we do have a number of 4Ks that we can rely on. We have a very good special that just pops something for 5K. So the pieces are there, but I am someone who likes to craft my turns and making sure that I'm lining up for one big play, where the Roy and Riza deck really just feels more of like a, we're going to go for it, go full throttle, and just hope our opponent doesn't answer anything, right? So if you really want to play probably the most aggressive deck in this set overall, then this is going to be the deck for you. Again, kind of crazy to say that about a blue deck, all things considering, for just how low and fast this can be. But again, this is definitely the one to go to, and also definitely worth, I should say, stressing in this regard. As we've talked about a lot, anytime that you get extra removal off of a raid, it's very good, and this does, again, require you a little bit of setup to pitch the right cards, but when we're able to get extra removal and also get a 4K attack after it, that really does lend itself quite well to the more aggressive nature. And then again, Reza every turn can just help shrink something as well, so you're not having to pitch as many cards. So again, there is a lot of synergy between the two halves of this deck, which is really nice to see. But again, if you have to play the lower to the ground aggressive strategy, this one can take a little bit of getting used to, as it is quite different to what we normally see in blue. Now, the one that I'm most excited for, Olivier, or as I just say, Armstrong. If maybe you don't want to do alchemy, right? Maybe you just want to punch your opponent as hard as you can with the full might. Well, Briggs is the way to do it. And I almost made the joke of, and I always like to showcase the SR here on the left side and be like, oh, this is like the key raid. This is like the enabler, whatnot. I almost put Fort Briggs because it's just insane for what it does as a site. And, if Mechamaru wasn't as, well, as expected, as popular of a deck for Gen Con, Fort Briggs stonks are like absolutely through the moon, right? Like, this is a site that just gets you so much value because it is effectively going to be an AP resetter that then allows you to go into the Olivier, the 3 energy one. And then in the next turn, it can start drawing you cards as you start wanting to play like the Buccaneer, which can get restood by Olivier, which allows you to be aggressive with it. You can give it impact. Like, this deck, once it gets online, and if you find your site at the right time, it is crazy strong, crazy consistent. Again, we have a searcher, which, again, I want to also stress that the searcher goes into the raid, which is really nice, but this deck just comes out swinging. So, it might not be the flashiest of decks. It might not be doing something super cool. I will give a shout out, though, to Ed for having the ability to take a life and be active in, right? The equal cost here of being able to use a life to be active and get a 4K swing. So again, just very straightforward. Blue is very aggressive in this set, but if you just want to come out punching and have some big bodies with it, absolutely great. And then of course, also we got to give a shout out to the other Armstrong, right? Of just having the damage too and being able to punch through at 4,500. So it's important that it is a 2 AP card, but then also 4,500 means it's a decent blocker. And the other thing to note here is that We have a ton of active triggers, and while it can be up for debate if it counts as a effective heal or as good as a heal, if you've been playing Union Arena for a while, you know that hitting an active trigger, as long as it's not the very last attack, you're effectively gaining 1 life. So anytime that we have a deck like this that can go higher on the active triggers, as well as having one of the better, color triggers in blue of just being able to bounce something most of the time, it can be pretty scary to attack into this deck as well. So again, huge fan of this deck. It is just very aggressive for what it wants to be doing. For me personally, if I was picking one of the 2 blue decks to play, I'm not a believer in going, super low to the ground all in. I would like to go, a turn slower, but then having the built-in impact, having the ability to restand stuff, right? Having the ability to draw extra cards, having the ability to threaten double damage too. Like, there is so much that you can do between the Big Armstrong and the Buccaneer, and just having so much value out of Olivier. So good. So again, for me personally, okay, I probably am a little bit biased, and I've talked about it, hyped it up this much as well. But again, just being able to pitch those extra cards that you're drawing to get in extra attacks, as we've seen time and time again, is so strong in Union Arena. Anytime that you're able to line up 5 or even 6 attacks, you're going to close out the game quite quickly, and even more so if one of them has damage 2 or impact 1 behind it. So if you want to see just more of a aggressive blue strategy that is very good and has a lot of consistency pieces to it, again, both with the Sight and the Searcher, then definitely look to the Briggs archetype. Now, I do have to be a little fair on this. I did say 6 deck lists, and let's face it, if you spend any time looking into this set, purple is kind of just the same deck. Like, there are minor differences that you can make between them, which I'm going to talk about with Kimberly, but they are pretty much the same deck. So on one hand, as we are going to showcase here, is you have Kimberly that is a 4K raid that does have a 3K removal baked into it. And what is neat about this deck is that you can actually use your final card, which is the Philosopher's Stone, to pitch it and gain impact. One of the difficult parts about purple in this set is that it doesn't have impact, doesn't really have a way to get that last chip damage that you really want. It's all about either double attacking or just forcing your opponent to constantly block so that you slowly wither them away into nothing. So with having a interest of getting to close the game and having something that can get us additional removal, Kimberly is very good at doing that. However, a lot of the deck and a lot of purple, or I should say like 90% of purple, is all about the homunculus, right? It's all about, well, lust. All right, I'm not going to say too much more about this list other than you get King Bradley at the top end, which is your double attacker, which can help. But realistically, what we really need to talk about is the technically a father deck, but I got to give it up to Lust. Look, right, at the end of the day, when we think about the various pieces that go into this list, right, you have the other one, which has a raid, is very aggressive, has the impact as a finisher, cool. But I am someone who is all about consistency pieces, getting extra draw effects, and not only do we get the tutor in this version of it, we have a Sight which can help us mill out to the father game plan, which is again going to be your double attack 5k closer. But then also we just have things like, and Envy is fine. If we get a more aggressive start and Lust is just able to find us the right pieces and maybe we draw into like extra specials and we just keep attacking, great, right? Lust just draws us so many cards. And then because we're able to get on the sideline, we're able to get the 3 energy back as well and just get the when played again. Spoiler, we're playing a bunch of homunculi. We're just going to get to draw an extra card. Like, strictly from a consistency piece. And yes, we do need to get, 20 cards into the sideline. This is just Muzan, but better, right? We get extra consistency. We have a special which does everything that we want it to do realistically in case we do need to build up the sideline, right? So the special is way better than we could have asked for. And then on top of all that, we're also going to be getting the Envy, which allows us to draw, have the impact if we really want it, and then also has a sideline effect. So it really just feels like Muzan was the test run, which is a Demon Slayer purple deck that was very similar to this. And now we just get to do everything better. Now, the one thing I will note here is that your 0 drops can get a little bit awkward in this list because we do want to have a higher homunculi count because of the 3 energy Lust. So you do have to run things like the small Bradley, which is also an active trigger. So that's fine, right? There are other ways that you could look for other non-homunculi parts, but because we are so focused on just getting Lust and getting all the extra value out of it, and then again, she's going to draw 3 cards when you raid with her and discard another card on top of it, it's great. This is the deck that if you just want to go through your deck every single game and having the maximum amount of draw and filtering power to hopefully then go into the big payoff that is either Father or technically Wrath is totally fine as well once you're getting up high enough. Like, those are your key finishers, right? You have extra impact, but at some point, because you're just churning through so much with Lust, you're more likely to find your specials. You're more likely to find your finals to extend out your turns, right? In a best of one setting, being able to go through your deck at such a high speed while still having removal behind it is going to lead to a winning strategy, spoiler, the vast majority of the time. So this is where things get a little awkward. If you want a slightly lower to the ground deck, I would definitely use the other purple deck that I mentioned, but if you're okay with being a couple turns slower for having a much better late game, in my opinion, then you're going to want to use this list. And again, if I had to pick between the two, I think this version is going to be a bit better just because the Father card is insane for everything that it wants to be doing. And again, you still just have an okay 4K with impact that you're able to line up as well, assuming you don't find the 2 of, which is a get trigger. So shocker, you're going to find it. And then just for shenanigans of it all, right? You are also going to find the 3 Energy King, which just says, okay, this is my final attack. I need this card to survive. Putting this on defense, you cannot interact with this card. No special for you, right? And you can set them up where no matter what, if their last card is a final, you can set up a turn that is going to KO your opponent, which is really strong. Again, does require a little bit more setup, but in Union Arena, when you can afford to play around a final trigger or something of that nature, especially when we have something like Lust, which is going to be able to draw us 3 cards on a raid, you're most likely going to be able to find those pieces quite easily. And so that's where I think that this Father deck really shines quite well. And then I guess I should also give a shout out here to the site, which I glossed over, but is important, right? It is an extra mill effect. Then, well, spoiler, get to draw more cards on top of it. So this is another deck that, you know, I'm really excited that we got to see the evolution of this style of deck. For those that have been playing since Demon Slayer, you get a little bit of an upgrade for what it wants to be doing. Now, again, I do think there's a little bit more even flexibility beyond this, but I really just want to focus all in on the Lust and Envy side of it because, again, Envy gives you a little bit more of that pushing power that you might not have had in the other list where they could just block for days and you slowly wither them down that way. But Lust is truly, I've said it like 4 times now, I can't stress enough, Lust is the MVP of Purple FMA, and honestly, just one of the better raids in general because it just gives you the extra consistency for how strong it plays into what the archetype is doing. For me, it's personally up between Lust and Ed, just because of Ed being able to find you like this site, which is so important, right? In terms of like making sure that the deck does its thing. But at the same time, Lust is just, I want to see more cards, and then I can spend those as I need, right? It's not as narrowly focused as, oh, I have to get this site, where Lust is just happy to see cards. So with that out of the way, of course, we have another tier list. And I'm going to be honest, I just copy pasted over the other one. I shifted these 3 down because I had to. But again, for me personally, I am very excited for the blue Briggs deck. I think it is just super powerful, super consistent at what it wants to be doing, and doesn't require you to have to get 20 cards in your sideline, right? The Briggs deck is definitely trying to end the game before your opponent gets there. And then I also really like the Ed deck. So I'll probably do a color split for this set and keep just one of them myself. So I'm just trying to figure out if someone wants a color split for yellow or blue, and I'll keep the other one myself. But I'm hoping for yellow because I like both those decks more than, you know, blue. I only like the Briggs deck in particular. So not too much to add here other than I want to stress, I just ran out of room, and this is why I didn't use this breakdown initially because there's just too much stuff on here now, but I really want to stress that every single version of Fullmetal Alchemist is definitely the Code Geass, right, of this year too. All of these decks for our meta are incredibly strong, either a 1.5 or a tier 2, which keep in mind is everything above this red line. And I literally just had to add this red line because some of the other comments are what people are saying, but anything above this red line, I would not be shocked at all if it tops Gen Con. That is just full front where it is in terms of where I think people could get some, you know, either you run hot or it's just a good deck, whatever it might be, right? Nothing above this red line would surprise me at all if it does well at Gen Con. That said, I'm totally expecting most of the meta to either be blue JJK, purple Code Geass, or, you know, whichever one version of Bleach that people really gravitated towards. I personally am all about purple squad 0 because it just, again, the extra consistency. I'm kind of beating a dead horse at this point when I keep saying consistency, but as we know in best of 1, that's pretty important. Having a bricked game can ruin your entire tournament run, and well, that's just no fun. So that is a quick breakdown of all the lists joining us for Fullmetal Alchemist. I know I only gave like 5.5 because I ran past one of them really quickly, but I just really wanted to stress that they are quite similar in what they want to be doing with only a couple small changes. So it almost feels like cheating is trying to call them 2 different decks when it's you change out 1 raid card basically and slide in Father if you want it or not. But if that's enough to change up a deck list or archetype in your opinion, then hey, that is 6 list overall. So with that, wraps up our video. Let me know down in the comments below, what is your favorite list from Fullmetal Alchemist? Which one will you be starting with? And especially if you're a new player, hi, welcome to Union Arena. Happy to have you with us. And of course, Bandai Card Games Fest will be super exciting as well. And a ton more Union Arena events to look forward to. So until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.